So Mark Esper is the former defense secretary under Donald Trump, and he is releasing a book, and apparently it is just full of absolute gems about Trump's insanity behind the scenes. So this is some reporting in the Hill. Let me show you. Former President Trump proposed launching missiles into Mexico to destroy drug labs run by cartels, according to an upcoming memoir from Mark Esper, his former Secretary of Defense. The New York Times first reported the news gaining an advance copy of Esper's memoir, A Sacred Oath, Memoirs of a Secretary of Defense During Extraordinary Times, which is slated for a release on Tuesday. According to Esper, Trump said the idea of bombing the drug labs at least twice, Trump raised the idea of bombing the drug labs at least twice in the summer of 2020. Trump told Esper the U.S. should shoot missiles into Mexico to destroy the labs. Quote, they don't have control of their own country, Trump told Esper, according to the Times review of the memoir. When Esper objected, Trump responded, quote, no one would know it was us, and we could just shoot some Patriot missiles and take out the labs quietly. This guy, man. I'll come back to that line in a second because there's a lot there that makes you know this is a real story. Esper at first assumed it was a joke, but thought otherwise as he looked at the president, according to the Times. Esper served as Secretary of Defense from 2019 to November 2020, when Trump fired him following disputes over police brutality and racial justice protests in the summer of that year. So, by the way, what they're referring to there is Trump wanted to use the Insurrection Act. The Insurrection Act. So he wanted to deploy the U.S. military in the streets of the U.S. to quell a protest. He wanted to, basically, it's like martial law, police state, authoritarianism type stuff, anti-First Amendment, anti-free expression, free speech, freedom to protest. And even his generals and his close advisors were like, no, we're not going to do that. And thank God in that instance, they drew the line. Because, I mean, look, there are instances where Trump fought with, people in his cabinet and people in the Pentagon where Trump was right, like getting out of Afghanistan, and they blocked that. So in that instance, I sided with Trump. This was an instance where, of course, you side with them because they're saying, yeah, you don't do the Insurrection Act over this. You don't do that. We have police, we have law enforcement. They can handle the, whatever sort of riots might come about. And also, you don't crack down on an entire protest because 5% of them or whatever are acting wrongly and doing illegal things, etc. You go after the people who did the wrong things. You don't go after the entire protest. Esper disagreed with him on that, to his credit. Now, Esper disagreed with Trump on that, so he was the one who was saying no Insurrection Act. Here's how I know the story is real. Because Trump said, when Esper was like, no, we're not doing that, Trump said, quote, no one would know it was us, and we could just shoot some Patriot missiles and take out the labs quietly. The no one would know it was us thing is exactly what he said about taking U.S. planes, putting a Chinese flag on it, and bombing the Russian military when they were lined up trying to get inside of Kyiv. Trump said the same thing publicly. He's like, what I would do is I would make it look like the Chinese are bombing Russia. That's what I would do. And nobody would know it was us. And we do it quietly. The quietly thing also sounds exactly like him. You do it fast, you do it quietly, you move in and out. You say, I don't even know what you're talking about. I didn't do that. It is a phenomenally dumb recommendation. It is incredibly stupid. Also, needless to say, it is massively illegal. You can't violate the territorial sovereignty of a country and act like that's totally okay. Again, think about the precedent of that. And this is also, I think, back to the Iraq War. That was illegal under international law. We did it anyway. Well, now you laid the precedent and anybody can invade anybody and say it's debatable. I think it's legal for me to do it, so I'm going to do it. This is the same shit, and Mexico is an ally of ours. Of course, they don't want the U.S. to do it. But he's like, look, do it anyway. Do it anyway. And also this idea of like, you know how we win the drug war is we need to treat it like a war. Well, to some extent, not this extreme, but to some extent, we have been doing that for decades. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work because there's a market, there's a natural demand for it, and so the supply is going to meet it. And of course, they have to, do it in all sorts of sneaky ways and underground ways, but that's not the way that you fix the situation. The way that you would fix that, of course, is to legalize, tax, and regulate drugs, set up a legal infrastructure, and undercut the drug cartels with real official businesses that do everything above board. You put them out of business. That's how you do it. But no, he wanted to double down on the drug war approach. Of course, he wanted to militarize the border beyond belief. And he was literally talking about launching missiles into Mexico to go after drug labs. By the way, this notion of like, well, we know where everything is and how it works. And we're not doing anything. We just know that. That's totally not true. That's totally not true. Like, oh yeah, we know how everything functions, but we just don't stop it. No, that's not accurate at all. But this is this kind of stuff that this guy floated, seriously. Keep it real, if he was the final voice on all of the policies, his presidency, even though it was terrible, would have been like 4 times worse than it was. Because even though a lot of the people around him are ideologues and they're right-wingers, and I don't agree with their politics at all, they at least had some semblance of like normiedom to them, where they would think like, what? You want to bomb Mexico? What are you talking about? You want to bomb Mexico and pretend it's not us, and you want to do it, quote, quietly? What are you even saying, dog? Now, by the way, there are some instances where his insane ideas, apparently they actually carried out. The best example of that is when we killed a top Iranian commander. Remember that? We took a drone and killed a top Iranian commander who, by the way, was in the battlefield going after ISIS. And then he came out and bragged about it, and, look, that sparked a crisis. And then there were retaliatory attacks in the region against us, and that could have spiraled out of control, man. We got lucky it didn't get as bad as it could have gotten. But that was one of those instances where he brought it up, and he was surrounded by the neocons and the bloodthirsty psychopaths who were dumb enough to be like, that's a great idea. Esper, I don't know if Esper was there during that. He probably was, but he may have signed off on it. So he's not bright, and he's very impulsive. And if every whim he had was entertained, oh my God, Lord only knows what else would have happened, man. But think about floating the idea of bombing Mexico when Mexico doesn't even want it. Mexico wasn't calling for it. The U.S. president has far too much power. This was a rare instance where he was reined in, just like he was with the Insurrection Act. But Commander-in-Chief, man. Commander-in-Chief controls our military. And then we have all these bullshit, Weasley ways where they can wage war without actually declaring it first. And technically it's constitutional up to a certain point. Like the War Powers Act or whatever that they invoke. We're lucky he didn't do more and he didn't do even worse stuff. Because with ideas like this, to say it's unstable is a massive understatement. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.